As you all know, that come 29th of May, we are going to elections. And as we are going to elections on the 29th of May, it's important that we are reminded that where we are currently, as Soweto, we're a constituency that is carrying a burden on its shoulders. Why? Because for us to win Gauteng, Johannesburg has to deposit at least 1 million to 1.5 million votes in favor of uMkhonto Wesizwe. Half of that, comrades, has to come from the southwestern townships. So as we gather here, comrades, in an activist forum, it is important that yourselves as activists in all townships of Johannesburg make it a point that all voters come out in their numbers to vote. Because remember that the system is designed in such a way that the minority must have a fighting chance. So what does that mean? Because, comrade, there is no way, I don't care how much money white people can spend, they will never outnumber us. But how come is it that the Democratic Alliance representing a constituency that is not even 10% of the population are second largest in Parliament? Must ask yourself that question. Why? Comrade is telling so being a shop steward of the South African Municipal Workers Union is suspended, by the way, for joining MK. But then he's telling us which budget assistance of Johannesburg is 83 billion and all of that, but currently being mismanaged. There's a reason for that. Is that there's a coalition government that is in place. Not because white people have more numbers, but because of these technicalities that they've taken advantage of. There's a system that we call proportionality, comrades. And a proportional representation is something that as an activist and as a member of the MK, Comrade Kazu, it's important that we teach our activists how it works. Because it assists us to therefore conscientize our supporters about the importance of coming out in their numbers to vote. I'll give you an example. Here in Soweto, the largest voting station has 10,000 to 14,000 members registered. Let's use the figure of 10. And then you go to a voting station, comrades, somewhere in the northern suburbs of Johannesburg, where in that small suburb, only 1,000 predominantly white people are registered to vote. If in that township voting station 5,000 people come out, and in the suburban voting station 900 people come out, the system of proportionality means that the white VD, the party that they voted for, wins. You know why? That 900 is 90% voter turnout. That 5,000 is 50% voter turnout. That is how calculative they are. It's enshrined in our constitution that way. Hence the necessity of a two-thirds majority so that we amend that criminal constitution. So, comrades, currently as a generation, there are certain realities that we need to face. And amongst those realities, comrades, is the fact that our children, I'm saying that they are small babies here, I've spotted one or two, they are going to have to pay debts that were incurred by a government at a time when they themselves were not even born. Currently, corporate was spending 20% of our entire GDP towards servicing our debts, foreign debts. A $500 billion that was borrowed for a vaccine that was expired. I think we all know the truth and the reality. Comrades, these are all the points which one can go on the whole day and the whole night conscientizing you as to why it's a necessity for the African National Congress of Ramaphosa to be unseated. Comrades, we need to use our vote because it is the most potent weapon that we currently have in our hands. The land is in the hands of the minority. The economy as a whole is in the hands of the white minority. Hence they've got the nerve to wake up one morning and decide it's our Panama bank account. Comrades, they are exercising the power that they've got. It is high time that we equally exercise the power that we have. Comrades, all of us here are concerned about unemployment, inequality and poverty in our country. But at the same time, comrades, I want to conscientize you of the reality that there are jobs in South Africa. It's just that there are not jobs for South Africans in South Africa. comrades, it's important for us to understand the politics behind that. Why? Because remember, comrades, that there's a poem, I forgot who the author is, but when foreigner met foreigner, they fought for the rain. The foreigners in question are the British and the Boer, whom when fighting over our land and resources, ultimately the Afrikaners were defeated. But because they were white in their skin color, and the fact that there was still a looming threat against white people in the country, that threat being us, the Africans, they had to strike a deal and get together and say, Chief, look, we fought amongst each other, but let us unite against the common threat, which are the indigenous people that you and I found here. And as a result, comrades, they got together to create what today is the Republic of South Africa, but prior then they called it the Union of South Africa. But inside that union, the British still had the superior power and the Afrikaners were their subordinates. So the Afrikaners grew increasingly frustrated of that reality, and you know what they did? Ultimately, they organized themselves. I won't go into their history because I'm not here to lecture you about Afrikaners per se. But to cut a long story short, in 1933, the radical Afrikaners of the National Party, led by Malan, entered parliament. In 1948, they won the majority. And they were confronted with the reality. That reality was the fact that the finance and the mining sectors of this country were dominated by the British. So they had to come up with a plan B, how do we feed our kids? And they all agreed that no, we shall focus on industrialization and agriculture. And as a result, that is why if I can take you to any English suburb, all you find is golf courses, beautiful offices. But if I can take you to a Dorp, Van der Belt Park, Vereeniging, Randfontein, a stone throw away from the suburb, Namafem, that was not a coincidence, it was designed. You and I, where did we fit into that picture? We fit perfectly into that picture because you and I were reduced to the slave labor of those industries. They took us into those industries, paid us peanuts, cared less whether we died at work or not. Even in their homes, our grandmothers literally raised all of these white kids with little to show for it. They introduced a series of laws, comrades, that legalized you and I being exploited workers. And as a result of that, we as the African majority therefore knew and understood that the power and the strength of the apartheid system is in its ability to generate wealth. So if you nip it in the bud and stop them from generating all of this wealth, you literally reduce the power of the apartheid machinery. And so we started to convert our unions into organizations that were not only fighting for our rights as workers, but into organizations that started to speak directly to the question of our independence and liberation. And as a result, comrades, we happen to be a unique population in Africa. Yourselves seated here, you are the only people in the African continent that were liberated by a class-conscious movement at the time. And when they entered parliament, comrades, they made it a point that all of the suffering and the exploitation that we have gone through has to come to an end. They got together and they said, all of us are equal in the workplace. Whether you are a male or a female, whether you are black or white, it's equal pay for equal work. And they introduced a law called the Employment Equity Act that made it a point that indeed that becomes a reality. They said that you and I are no longer going to be subjected to working conditions that are harsh and exploitative, and that you and I in the workplace are going to be treated equally as your white counterparts, with all the benefits. And so they introduced what we call, comrades, the Basic Conditions of Employment Act. And furthermore, they decided, this very same working class conscious individuals, that we need to have a law that is going to protect all of these gains, so that when the employer refuses to recognize my rights, I shall have the right to organize myself. And that became the Labor Relations Act. And as a retaliation, comrades, by white globally capital, they said, now that we're liberated and we are protected by this act, we will retrench you in numbers and replace you with foreign nationals that are undocumented so that the exploitation continues. And that is why, comrade, you travel the entire Midriff Road. All of those factories who get a packet dropping, who's employed there. Go to Devlin and see who works there. Now I'm conscientizing you about this reality not to make you xenophobic, no. Understand that our brothers and sisters from Africa are just victims of a cruel economic system. If we want to fight the system, let's take the fight where it has to go. Comrades, the enemy is in the GSE controlling our money. Our enemies are our street banks controlling our money. That is where our enemies are. So our brothers and sisters usually become that low-hanging fruit to which they are easy targets. But in essence, comrades, that is why as a black child today, to a point whereby you end up resorting to substance abuse. Not because you are useless. Comrades, you have been called lazy as South Africans, but you were not lazy when you were building Canton Center. You were not lazy when you went into the mine shafts to dig half of the holes gold. You were not lazy. You were not lazy when you had to work in their gardens, when our grandmothers had to nurture and raise their babies. We were not lazy. Come that democratic dispensation, now that we've got our rights, all of a sudden South Africans are lazy and entitled. There's something we need to guard against and condemn. Comrades, all of us here, I believe that majority of us are from the township. Yes, but all of us are exposed to the township. Comrades, I think all of us are aware of the realities. If you can walk out of this street now, I don't think you'll reach even that third house whilst going door to door. The housing disputes that are there. And all of us might be people who ask, because it's between no. We are fighting over 4-room houses because we are landless. We are fighting over bedrooms because we are landless. Comrades, the primary crime that has been committed against you in this country was the dispossession of your land through the 1913 Land Act, where they agreed amongst themselves that they are going to keep 87% of the land, share it between themselves, and then the 13% reserves that you will see to finish. Those reserves, comrades, were still living in them. Soweto is one of those reserves. Alexandra is one of those reserves. Deepsloot, Orange Farm, Duduza, you can name that townships. So, comrades, what I'm then trying to say is that when uMkhonto Wesizwe speaks about expropriation of land without compensation, it is a good policy going forward because not a single white farmer can produce a receipt that says these black people sold me this land in 1930. As uMkhonto Wesizwe today, we are working very closely in our course in our fundis. And there's a reason for that. It's because, comrades, when this revolution was started, once upon a time, the apartheid government itself had a policy. They would not attack a church. That is why our comrade Derek here, that age group, they can tell you, I'm a comrade, I am a meeting is on doing. Because they knew that the apartheid war machinery will not enter that institution. Why? Because umfundisi back then, the institution was protected and strong. So it is important today as young people, especially comrades. Comrades abuse, I know that you are very passionate about the subject of Christianity. Comrades, the institution of Christianity is under attack from criminals. The institution called the church is under attack from Mama 26 that take your love for the Lord and see an opportunity to make money. Comrades, I think that time has arrived that we as members of the youth, given an opportunity, in those churches that we know which are about, perhaps it's high time to pay a visit. Thank you very much. And I'll tell you why I'm saying this, comrades. We are raised by our Kopanong. I believe strongly, comrades, that actually was surviving today because of Ngcobo. Whether alive or dead, as and I believe all of us acknowledge that. So, comrades, we did not allow a situation where that institution is reduced into a money-making institution. Yourselves as young people, I think we need to make it a point that we actually guard against such tendencies and practices. Furthermore, comrades, as Africans, we've got our spirituality. And today, comrades, we have people who take advantage of our spirituality. The problems and the challenges that we are going through means that sometimes, as an African, to try and find answers and solutions to the problems that I'm facing. Today, comrades, you cannot be quiet as members of the Youth League when a young lady, are you patient? Sazukuti utwa satina, milukishwa Ngcobo wena, basiti bye. Comrades, you can't be having such things. These are direct attacks to our way of life. And we are subjected to these problems and challenges, comrades. It cannot be that ourselves are quiet. It is high time that we rise against it. Comrades, South Africa has the largest prison population in the African continent. Comrades, you can travel all the countries. Nigeria has a population 3 times larger than that of South Africa. But Nigeria does not have a single jail that is as big as our Sun City. So we need to ask ourselves, comrades, what is it that is happening that is leading to the mass incarceration of our youth? Particularly the young black men. Because the young black man, comrades, is living under social pressure to a point that he has become a danger not only to himself, but to his sisters, to his brother, and even to his mother. So we need to ask ourselves, comrades, what is it that has happened to the young black men in our society? To a point that he has become such a danger and a threat. And when we say that, comrades, we are dealing with GBV, I want us to be holistic, and I don't try to antagonize the feminists in the home. But when we deal with the question of GBV, comrades, we tend to make a mistake of thinking that GBV, it's when me as a man assaulting a woman. But if you can walk into any hospital and see the victims of violence in their majority, and if you can walk into any police station and check the records as to who are the victims or who are the perpetrators in their majority, comrades, there's a problem with the young black man. Yeah. The young black man is extremely angry. Society puts pressure on him that he needs to be a provider. But there's an economic system that is led by those who see him as a threat. And so they continue to subject him to poverty. And then the black man, because society says you need to be a provider. And how does the young black man become a provider in a society that deprives him of economic opportunity? The young black man resorts to crime. And if that doesn't work for the young black man then drowns himself in alcohol and kills himself with nyao. So I want us today, comrades, when we approach the issue of substance abuse, the criminal in this case is the drug dealer. That drug user is a patient and a victim. Yes. We need to be conscious of that reality at all times. Yes, it's no but one day let's just get together, comrades, get social schema. I think it's about time we do that. Comrades, one of the points that I wish to make here is that at some point we had a movement here in South Africa started in 2015, and it was called #FeesMustFall. And that was a call, comrades, by the African child saying to the government of the day, "Angisifuni ukuzithola ngimekhoneni ngihlala amadayisi. Angifuni ukuzithola ngigqoke isiphezana ebusuku selling my body. Angifuni ukuzithola ngithola imoto yomuntu. Angifuni ukugqekeza imoto yomuntu." As per the clause in the Freedom Charter that says that doors of culture and learning shall be open. Therefore, the young African child was simply asking for an opportunity to gain access into institutions of higher learning so that they should food. And comrades, with the movement of FeesMustFall, if you can fast forward to today, even after President Zuma made the declaration that indeed there shall be the implementation of free education, comrades, the reality is that it is not happening. And I'm quite shocked today that there seems to be little upset about it, that we are okay about the reality, that free education has not yet been realized in South Africa. Comrades, let me remind you that somebody out there does not want to see you enter in certain institutions. Why? Because the moment you enter those institutions, you become conscientized. And the moment you become educated, automatically you become liberated. It is no longer easy to exploit you when you've got the means to survive. The reasons why you are kept poor, comrades, is so that tomorrow they can keep offering you these small jobs for a minimum wage. Because of severity, you take it. At times, because of fundana, you accept it and you take it. But the reality is that, comrades, we need to challenge this thing called institutional autonomy, where these universities, despite government subsidy, are being operated like somebody's private business, because they are not. Comrades, it cannot be that to register in an institution that can only take 2,000 people, they allow 90,000 registrations. And all of these registrations, you pay plus minus 200 rand for the registration fee, sometimes even more. How much have they made by rejecting you? Is that even fair? Comrades, you need to take over when that generation of fees must fall left off and take it to the next level. Why? Because, comrades, education has to be free in this country, by hook or crook. Comrades, allow me by concluding to remind you, South Africa is an extremely wealthy country. I don't know if you comrades are aware as to how wealthy South Africa is. Let me remind you. Comrades, South Africa has a GDP of 4 trillion. A GDP of 4 trillion. If you read the budget speech and calculate the figures, you will realize that government works with the fiscus of 1 trillion. SARS doesn't collect anything above it. Who controls the trillion? Private sector. So, comrades, it is important that as uMkhonto Wesizwe Youth League, we take a posture that seeks to wrestle this economic power and influence from the hands of the white racist minority. And when we say that, comrades, we are not saying that we are going to take what belongs to white people. We are saying that through a government of uMkhonto Wesizwe, we will unapologetically challenge economic opportunities towards black people. And we shouldn't be ashamed of that. Comrades, out of this 1 trillion that I'm speaking about, 800 billion of that goes towards outsourcing services from the private sector. 800 billion is spent outsourcing. That means I'm a tender in this country. 80% of government budget goes there. Only 200 billion finances the state. So it means that the South African government does have the means and the financial capacity to empower all of you in this country. But somebody out there, comrades, who makes major decisions, decides that they're going to channel these economic opportunities towards those who have captured them. So, comrades, with that being said, it is therefore important that we don't forget as activists that when we go out there and campaign for uMkhonto Wesizwe, we are not just driven by a passion who type ANC. We could have done the same if it was the IFP in power. Could have done the same if it was the EFF, could have done the same if it was the DA. Any political party that is in power that fails to utilize the state resources to drive the developmental agenda of the Africans is a political party that is our enemy. Definition line. We must not mince our words about that. I'm glad, comrade GP, that the manifesto of uMkhonto Wesizwe iphumile. I thought it was going to be a long document that is complicated. It's simple and straightforward. Comrades of the zone and comrades of the region, we need to unpack our manifesto, comrades, because it's a very progressive manifesto. We need to make sure that each and every member that is present here knows and understands that manifesto. And let me tell you why I say this, comrades. Because it speaks directly to the plight of the African masses. Many want to accuse us of racism when you say the African masses. But comrades, we will not be afraid of prioritizing our interests as Africans. The Freedom Front Plus is very explicit in its manifesto. It represents the African. They are not ashamed of it. So why should we be ashamed of saying that our primary interest and focus is everyone who's in this room, the black child, the African child, should prosper in this land. Comrades, it cannot be that we are standing here right now on top of mineral resources that are very deep and very vast. In fact, this very community where we are surrounded literally by 5 mines. We are living in the center of them. And yet, comrades, these communities do not even own 1% of these mines. One day you must make time, comrades. If we are serious about radical economic transformation, it's right around the Ngcobo. It's right around the Ngcobo. Comrades, you cannot say that we want to liberate South Africa and yet we fail to start in our very own backyard. It's about time that we do the comrades. Me and people is sponsoring a program as I'm about to sit down. That we need to go to Main Reef Road. And actually ask our child, okay, but the most important question, where are South Africans in China and why are you not employing them? Let's talk about the stores that are inside. Why are you not owning them? Comrades, we need to ask these questions because it is necessary. Not that we are fighting against the Chinese, but we are fighting against any form of economic injustice against us. It is high time that we do that. Comrades, we've got our compatriots who are about to vote with us in 29. Our Sandile, who are voting for a government that has a policy about the criminal record and cash. Now, comrades, I'm not condoning any crime. But you need to be realistic, because all of us here, as a family, see that or it's your brother or your sister. All of us here are affected by that reality. Comrades, it cannot be that our brothers and sisters walk out of prison with degrees and they're still charged and they're told that they're not rehabilitated. Can't you? Comrades, it cannot be that we have a situation whereby our brothers and sisters, they graduate, but when they come out into society, they are subjected to an environment that recycles them back into the criminal activity that they did prior to their incarceration. So, comrades, what I'm saying is that in as much as we're not condoning any rapists, we're not condoning any murderers, but the bulk of our brothers and sisters who are behind bars were there because the economy had pressured them and put them to a position whereby they had few options but to commit crimes. And if a person serves their sentence, comrades, and they come out rehabilitated, I think that the government of uMkhonto Wesizwe needs to think twice about saying, well, you crashed the car because you were drunk. You were then arrested for Kopanong homicide, and you got in there and spent whatever years in prison. And then when you walk out with an accounting degree. You've never committed fraud before. I, for one, believe that you deserve to be employed in a bank. So, with those words, let us make sure that Xenophobia is valid in our numbers and that we continue to campaign for uMkhonto Wesizwe. Despite all of the sabotage that is there, comrades. We know that today we're expecting the court judgment has been postponed. It's fine, comrades, it will be delivered tomorrow. And I want to assure all of you, comrades, that if indeed they are okay upstairs, they will not want to make a decision that removes uMkhonto Wesizwe from the ballot. I don't think that they want to make such a decision because I think they are well aware that the people of South Africa have overwhelmingly responded to the clarion call by uMkhonto Wesizwe Party. The call is made by President Zuma that indeed 2024 is our 1994. Comrades, we are going to bring about that change come the 29th of May. We are going to liberate South Africans from water shedding. We are going to liberate South Africans from the systematic and intentionally imposed load shedding. We are going to liberate South Africans from the intentionally imposed unemployment. who are equally going to liberate our brothers and sisters from the continent, from the exploitation where they are employed in our place. Comrades, who are going to liberate this country. uMkhonto Wesizwe was formed in 1961 as an army of the people, the Rumola's child, and it continues to be that. But today, in your hands. Comrades, let us go out on the 29th of May and make sure that in the first ballot, second ballot, and the third ballot, we vote for uMkhonto Wesizwe. I think I've spent too much time speaking. I think the only person who has the right to speak a lot here is Comrade Deputy President. I'm not a good singer, I'm a comrade. So as I move from the podium, I'm hoping that the program director is going to give us a beautiful song. Come